Welcome back to Small Caps, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kerry Stevenson. Today, I've asked Bernard Rowe, the Managing Director of Ioneer, to join me. The ASX code is INR. Now, they've been in the news recently, and it was to do with potentially some blocking, some slowing down of the project. I really wanted to get to the bottom of this with Bernard today, so I've asked. He's just back from the project. The project is a lithium and boron project. It's called Rhyolite Ridge over in Nevada. It has done a lot of work, but there's just been a little bit of, I don't know, stuff going on. So I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. Bernard, welcome back to Small Caps. Good to see you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kerry. Great to be back. And as you say, I'm just back a couple of days from being 3 weeks in Nevada. So,
well, I appreciate
completely up to date.
I appreciate you coming on. Let's just talk. I want to get this out right at the top because I'm going to go into the project itself. But the news media has come out and said that the Biden administration is slowing down, potentially blocking some projects, and could include Ioneer. I guess the rumor mill is a little bit chatty about that. I want to hear from you. You've just come back from the US. You've been in touch with a number of agencies over there and the administration. What's going on?
Yeah, so I think it's a good point that you raised, Kerry, and obviously it is something that I've had discussions with the government, various government agencies whilst I've been in Nevada. And, my view and the company's view is it's a complete mischaracterisation that's been put forward in the media. Certainly I can only speak for our project, but in terms of slowing things down, blocking things, we don't see any evidence of it at all. We've got very strong engagement with the relevant government agencies. In our case, yes, we do have a sensitive plant species, a rare plant of buckwheat, Teams buckwheat, that grows out on the site. We've been in consultation with the Fish and Wildlife because development of this project has to take that plant into account. And we've had excellent engagement over more than a year with the Fish and Wildlife Service. They during those discussions last year, they asked if it was possible that we could modify our mine plan slightly to avoid some of the buckwheat that we were wanting to move. We were never going to move all the buckwheat, but there were some clusters of plants that we wanted to move. I think as much as anything, it was a bit of a knowledge gap around how this plant would behave if you tried to move it. And so we listened to the concerns. We agreed that we would make some modifications to our mine plan. It's basically just moving away some hundreds of metres from the buckwheat. It's a pretty straightforward process, really. So that's certainly not slowing anything down or blocking things. It's really just listening to the concerns of a government agency that has a legal obligation to protect this plant. It's a sensitive species.
So you
it's
think
probably going to be listed.
So you think that's where this commentary has come from in slowing things down? You're going, it's nothing to do with the project itself. But having said that, I just want to ask you this. Isn't buckwheat doesn't it grow everywhere? Why?
Yes. It's a very, very common plant in many parts of Nevada. Now, there are many, many different species, more than 100 different species. And so, part of it's a function of the basin and range sort of topography that you have in Nevada. But, there's no question that there's a small population that grows on about 10 acres out at Rhyolite Ridge that's called Teams buckwheat. It's regarded as a separate species. It grows on the edge of our deposit, but it's one of many, many hundred or more than 100 species of buckwheat, and many of them behave the same. They're a small ground cover type plant. There are the small black dots at the base of the hill here behind me, which, by the way, is not going to be mined at all, contrary to what many people have said. It's something that we've known about with this project right from day one. We've built that into our plans. We did want to move some of them, but, we know that the Fish and Wildlife don't want us to do that. So we've modified our plans. It doesn't create a big impact. What it does do, though, as you can appreciate, when you move a pit, even if it's a short distance, then, of course, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to update that mine plan and look at, changing changes to the groundwater models and things like that. So it's a fairly simple process overall, but there's actually a lot of sort of, support documents and plans and things that then need to be updated. So we've had to do that, yes, but we've been perfectly happy to do that. It was something that we, as I said this before, discussed extensively with the Fish and Wildlife, and we can do that, and that's what we're doing, and we'll move forward. There are no other barriers, issues, anything else that's slowing us down. So I think as soon as we update all those documents and submit them all, then we'll be moving ahead.
Well, and that's what I just want to make it absolutely clear. There is nothing blocking the project. There is nothing holding the project back. What you're doing is the final, I guess, paperwork to assure fisheries and wildlife that everything's going to be looked after. You're actually moving the mine, the pit, so that it doesn't impact. And you're quite a long way down the track. So I just want to, to I guess, wrap this up. No blocking, yes, even though that was mentioned.
Yes.
And no, I guess, stopping of the project, because I think the market got a little bit spooked, and hence the share price got a bit spooked.
Yeah, that's right. So, yes, I can confirm there are no other issues that have been raised by the Bureau of Land Management or the Fish and Wildlife Service. The only modification that we've had to do to our plans is around the avoidance of the buckwheat. We've done that. We're just updating the documents. And as far as we're aware, we're then clear to proceed into the final stage of the permitting process, which is called the NEPA process, to get the last remaining permit that we need before we can commence construction. So, yes, I can confirm that.
Okay, thank you. I'm really pleased you clarified that. Bernard, what's your time frame on this final permit and starting construction? Do you see anything getting in the way of that happening?
No, I don't see anything getting in the way of that happening. I mean, again, we've dealt with the one sensitive issue that was raised. And remember, we prepared what's called a plan of operation, that 1,000-page document that described every aspect of this project. So, and that's been reviewed extensively by the BLM. This was the only matter that needed to have some additional attention. We've done that. We've addressed it. We're ready to move on. In terms of timing, we're working to get this work done this month, the first quarter. So we're obviously in the last month of the quarter. We're working diligently and systematically through the documents to make sure everything's updated and consistent, and then we're ready to go. Well,
one of the things that, and for those of you that don't know who Ioneer are, go and look at the previous interview that I've done with Bernard. We talk about all that. I don't want to waste your time on that. Yeah. But what I do want to ask is, there's a lot of lithium companies out there. Investors sometimes get confused. I want to know, what's unique about Ioneer? What makes you a little bit different?
Yeah, thanks, Kerry. That's a good question to ask, obviously, for an emerging company like ours, and there are others, obviously, our peers. But what sets us apart, there's a couple of things. One is that we're located in the United States, and there are very, very few lithium projects within the United States, full stop, okay? And it's the second largest car market in the world, and we're moving into an environment where supply chains need to be shortened for two reasons: geopolitical risk, and secondly, decarbonisation. We can't any longer afford to be moving these materials all around the world. So that sets this apart. And the other key thing is the fact that it's a hard rock deposit. The hill behind me that's all ore, even though we're not going to mine it. But it's a hard rock deposit. You have to drill and blast it to mine this material. But unlike spodumene, we're making the lithium end products at the site, okay? So this is not being sent anywhere else in the United States nor overseas for refining. We're making lithium carbonate, and in the future we'll make lithium hydroxide, and in our case, boric acid. That really sets this project apart, where you're going to be doing everything at the site, and you're going to be selling at the mine gate, or as it goes out through the mine gate will be these lithium end products, lithium carbonate, lithium hydroxide. That's really rare in the lithium space.
What made you? What was the decision around doing that? They're going to the end product rather than just mining, blasting the lithium.
Yeah, so it's all to do with mineralogy, really, what minerals make up the rock. And so, you're familiar with the spodumene deposits. Well, spodumene's a lithium-bearing mineral, and it's relatively straightforward to extract that from a rock and make a concentrate of that mineral, and then that gets shipped somewhere else for refining. But here, we don't have a mineral that we concentrate. We actually leach, just like you would with copper. We leach the lithium and the boron out of the rock at the site. It goes into solution, so it's then a liquid, dissolved lithium and boron. And to get that back into a solid, we do a series of processes, but they end with precipitation, making it back into a solid. And the solid that we make is lithium carbonate. So it's the natural process for treating this very unique ore that we have at Rhyolite Ridge that allows us to make the end product. There is, in other words, there is no intermediate product here. You're going from crushing the rock to producing lithium carbonate in a continuous integrated process.
And I guess when we're looking at the fact that lithium is for the electric vehicle revolution, and we're looking at that carbon output, doing it in this way, does that reduce the end result's carbon footprint?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. So, we're making these end products, and often, making end products is a very energy-intensive process. And again, for spodumene, it certainly is. For lithium brines, they use the sun for concentration. But generally speaking, when you're doing this end refining, it's a very energy-intensive process. Yeah. It's why a lot of Australian spodumene, or nearly all of it, gets sent to China for processing, because for various reasons, including cheap energy. Okay, here we don't use any external energy. We don't have any gas pipelines. We're not connected to a grid. Everything we do, the energy to do it comes from the sulfuric acid plant that we have on site to create the sulfuric acid that we use to leach the ore. And that same sulfuric acid, that's exactly what's used in leaching copper deposits. So this is not new in the mining industry, this leaching with sulfuric acid, but we make the sulfuric acid on site. And when you do that, it releases a lot of energy. We capture that energy.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's like they actually call it waste heat. It's heat that's generated in the process. And, it's waste because it's not really what you're wanting to produce. It's the sulfuric acid that you're producing, but you can capture and use that heat. And that's what we do. And that means that this entire operation will be including this, refining of the lithium to get to these 99% purities. It'll be done using power that comes from that sulfuric acid plant. Zero CO2 emissions from that power. It's just adding sulfur and water, and the chemical reaction generates a lot of heat, a lot of steam. So you've got steam to heat things, and you've got steam to pass through a steam turbine. That generates electricity, and this entire project will be self-sufficient of energy because of that.
I'm sorry, I just had to stop for a moment because that's just so clever. Sometimes, Sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, humans can be very clever. That's clever. When you first came across this project, I'm just getting my head around. I wasn't aware of this. Were you aware that you could make this completely self-sufficient, that you wouldn't need a gas pipeline or electricity grids or anything like that?
No, we were not. This is something that we learned along the way. So, there are no other deposits that we know of anywhere in the world that are exactly like Rhyolite Ridge. So it really is a unique deposit. And we developed this flow sheet. It doesn't use none of this is new technology. It's just taking existing technology and adapting it to a unique deposit. Now, there had been people that had looked at, these type of, not so much this deposit, but similar sedimentary lithium deposits, which includes lithium clays, which Rhyolite Ridge is not. But some of them are using or are proposing to use roasting to extract the lithium. Now, roasting just means high temperature, lots of energy. You need generally gas to do that. And that's exactly what happens to spodumene deposits. So the spodumene that's mined in Western Australia, I said it gets sent to China. The very first thing that happens to it is it gets put in an oven at 1,000 degrees to roast it, to liberate the lithium from the mineral. Now, that is used in some, or proposed to be used rather, in some of these lithium clay deposits. And so that is something that we considered maybe this is necessary here. But as we did the work, what we found is this is incredibly easy to leach. You just crush the material. You don't have to grind it, don't have to make it very small, don't have to put it in tanks. It can be just done in a vat, or even actually it works as a heap leach like is done in gold and copper mining. But you basically just crush the rock, contact it with water and sulfuric acid. The lithium and the boron is really quite soluble, and it comes into solution. And so, no, we did not realise that when we started this project, and I think it's a sort of a sign of a remarkable deposit when, the more you know about it, the more favourable it becomes. They're few and far between in the world of mineral deposits, as you well know. This is one of them. As we've done this work and learnt more and more about this deposit, it's actually got easier and easier. And that doesn't happen very often in mine and economic geology.
And Bernard, right now, I keep saying this to me, inflation is here to stay. Energy is going to become an issue for some projects because the costs are going to be going through the roof for energy. So
yes.
Hear that, I think that is a massive, unique point for Ioneer. One of the things you mentioned just before I want to bring up is... Sorry,
Kerry, can I just jump in and just mention one other thing, because I totally agree with what you've just said about the importance of energy. There's another little sort of benefit here with Rhyolite Ridge, and that is that we may well have surplus energy because this process that I described before, it creates a lot of energy, more than what we need. So there is actually the potential in the future that any excess energy that we do generate, that we can actually put it into the grid as zero CO2 power. Now, one of the problems is we don't have any power lines nearby, but so that's something to overcome. However, I guess there's often a bit of luck involved in exploring and finding mineral deposits, again, as you know all too well. Well, it just happens there's a couple of large undeveloped geothermal fields north of here, and there are several companies that are working together collaboratively, and we're involved in some of that collaboration on looking at bringing transmission lines into this area so that those geothermal fields can be developed and then put significant geothermal power into the grid, and potentially Rhyolite Ridge could be contributing its excess energy into that same transmission lines in the future. It's not something that we're going to do on day one, but it's certainly something that we've flagged for future. So just thought I'd mention that as well.
Absolutely, pretty interesting. You mentioned before, Bernard, the hill behind you, you're not going to be mining that. Why not?
Because there's buckwheat growing. So the small black dots at the base of that hill are buckwheat plants. And the reason it's a hill, by the way, is because it's on the edge of the deposit. It's not out in the middle of it. It's right on the edge. So it's, first and foremost, it's protected because there's buckwheat growing there. But secondly, it's the edge of the deposit. So whether we start mining there or a few hundreds of metres away from it, in actually this case, we're probably about 400 or 500 metres away from that hill. It's a very large deposit. It's easy for us to avoid the buckwheat, and that's why we're not mining the White Hill. All
right. Well, we're running out of time, so I need to just very quickly talk about funding. Now, Sibanye-Stillwater have come in on the equity side. This is a big project. Throw some numbers at me so that my audience, my investor audience out there, understands it's a big project, but you're confident of how that's going to be funded.
Yeah, look, it is a big project, and there's a large capital investment required of the order of $800 million. It was a little bit under that in the DFS, but we use $800 million as a guide. So it's a big project, but it generates a huge amount of revenue as well. Even if you go back and look at the DFS, the bankable feasibility study that we completed now 2 years ago when we were using $13,000 lithium price.
Yeah, more now.
Yeah, actually, I saw some numbers yesterday from Fast Markets, $69,000 for the spot market for lithium yesterday. I think that update was out. So
it's 69,000 now. Last time I checked, it was about 45.
No, 69,000 was for lithium carbonate, battery grade lithium carbonate from Fast Markets yesterday that I saw. Okay. So, look, that's the spot market, and it'll come back, no question. But I think everyone agrees we're going to see higher prices for longer because there's this incredible increasing deficit mismatch between supply and demand. So we don't think we're going to see back to $13,000 prices. But that's what our DFS numbers showed. That's what we used 2 years ago, rather. This project generates, $100 million of revenue from boric acid and somewhere between $200 and $300 million a year from lithium. So it's a big project. It generates a lot of revenue. It needs $800 million capital investment. Our strategy for Ioneer to be able to secure that sort of level of funding, given we're a small single asset company, was to bring in a strategic partner. We did that with Sibanye-Stillwater last year. So Sibanye will contribute $490 million US once we make the final investment decision and have got the all clear and permits in place, etc. So $490 million is obviously about 60% of the money that's required to build the project. Yep. So that's the equity component covered. The rest of it we would intend to fund with debt. This project can easily withstand a significant, 50-60% debt equity fund ratio. So, we've been working closely with Goldman Sachs on a variety of debt solutions, but without doubt, the one that we've got our eyes on and it's our priority and it's by far the most attractive is that we successfully were invited into the loans program office by the US Department of Energy. We are the only lithium project in the United States to be invited into that detailed final stage of due diligence. We'd been working through all of 2021 with the Department of Energy doing their own internal due diligence, but now we've moved into the final where they bring in some external consultants to do a sort of a final third-party due diligence. We've actually started that right now. That could provide Ioneer with the debt funding on top of the Sibanye money to take us above the $800 million. And that, if we're successful with the Department of Energy, which we think we're in with a very excellent chance of that, given the mature nature of this project and the investments that we've already made in it and the equity that we already have through Sibanye, what you'll be looking at is, US Treasury rate, 10-year rate. So, around about 2% at currently, I think the US 10-year Treasury rate is. So, by far and away the cheapest debt funding that you could possibly get. And, we're working hard on that, and we think we're in with a very good chance of getting it.
Well, that's amazing. Give me a quick big picture, time frame. You've got a permit that needs to be done. Just give me I'm not going to hold you to it, Bernard, but just big picture time frame.
Yeah, so big picture time frame is, and this is in the public, we've indicated this in our recent announcements and presentations, but we're working towards having this final permit in place by the end of this calendar year. That would allow us to commence construction. We have a 2-year build. So, we would envisage that 2023 and 2024 will be construction periods for us. First production late in 2024, and then, ramping up into full production in 2025.
Not that far away when I'm talking to you in March 2022. So lots going on. Plenty of news coming out for you. We've run out of time, my friends. So 3 reasons why my audience, the investors out there, need to sit up and take notice of ASX code INR right now. I think you've already told me, but anyway, let's just go through.
I'll do a real quick recap. So, we're going to be the next lithium producer in the United States, and we will quadruple the existing lithium production. So, that in itself is a great reason to get behind Ioneer. We have the equity funding already in place through the Sabunya deal. You're going to see us progressing over the coming few months. The Department of Energy loan program, debt funding opportunity that's open to us, which I described. And I think thirdly, and most importantly, we have 2 of the 3 critical permits to allow us to commence construction. We're working very closely with the Bureau of Land Management and the US Fish and Wildlife Service in collaboration to get those permits in place. And as soon as we have that final permit, we're good to go. We've done the engineering, we'll have the financing in place, and we'll be good to commence construction. So, we're in for a really busy year again this year, and I think everything is looking, really positive for us. And we're working hard to make sure we are the next lithium producer in the US.
Well, Bernard Rowe, Managing Director of Ioneer, thank you so much for joining me on Small Caps today. There you heard it, ladies and gentlemen. All that chat about things, being blocked or slowed down. They're not slowing down. In fact, they're probably speeding up. 1 permit to go. Lots of news flow coming up. The funding is getting in place. As Bernard said, they are on track. And what blew my mind is they don't need any external sources of energy. This is going to be all compact and, carbon neutral, carbon zero, lithium, critical minerals, tick, tick, tick. Bernard Rowe, great to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much, Kerry. Pleasure.